it for future Burning Questions organizers, as well as for posting it on Burning Questions social media platforms. So if you do not wish to be recorded, you can always turn off your camera and also use the chat feature instead of opening your mic. I will be facilitating, doing most of the talking, while Tuğba will manage the technical side of this workshop, and she will also handle the chat. So she will reply to you if you post something in the chat. So without further ado, let's quickly have a look at some of our burning questions related to this topic. I hope you're reviewing my shared screen now on Zoom. So some of our burning questions related to this theme are, how can we meet in the middle when stakeholders in education have different values? Why do value conflicts emerge in the first place? Once they emerge, how can these conflicts be resolved? Whose values are represented in education? And who gets to decide the values which are represented in schools? Perhaps some of you have had similar questions, and perhaps you have more questions now arising in your mind. And I hope we will address some of those and keep those in mind, perhaps write them down. And I think we'll have space for you to discuss those. And I'm sure more questions will arise as we dive deeper into this workshop. But on to the agenda now.
Hello, everyone. Our workshop will take 90 minutes or so. We'll first start with the value activity. We'll start with the definition of what value means. And we're going to dive into our personal values. After that, we're going to dive into society and schools values. And we have a case activity, and it will be really nice to work. And we are going to, if we have time, we're going to deal with the takeaways, but maybe we are going to deal with in debrief session, I believe. So let's start with, let's go on with the ground rules. Since our main idea is to discuss value conflicts, since it's a sensitive topic, we have some ground rules. Firstly, listen, and then before you talk, listen and respect everyone and every idea. Criticize ideas, not individuals, and always talk in I talk, like in my opinion, I think, I believe. So let's just get started with our first activity.
But also, could you give a quick thumbs up emoji if you sort of agree with those ground rules and if you're on board with those?
Thank you for reminding that, Alex. That's great. Thank you so much for thumbs up.
So Tuğba is going to post in the chat the link to this platform that we're using. So go ahead and get on that. It's called Mural. It might ask you to register, but for this workshop, you do not need to register. You can just log in as a guest user, and you can name yourself, or you can join as a guest Fox or something, anonymous name like that. And then we'll go ahead and get started with the first activity. So for our first activity, while you're still finding your way to Mural, I'm going to introduce this. We're going to quickly construct some knowledge together around what values mean to you, what values mean to us. So you can use the sticky note feature of the mural. You have a little bit of guidance there in green. If you're viewing my screen, you can see my mouse around that. And also in the top right corner, you have some further prompt questions if the original question doesn't resonate with you so well. So go ahead and add some sticky notes reflecting on what values mean to you. We'll have about 2 or 3 minutes for this. Just a quick reminder, perhaps in case this didn't reach you before the workshop, we suggest that you participate in this workshop through a computer or a tablet, because using this mural space on a phone is just not so convenient. So if you're still on your phone and you have a computer or tablet around, I suggest that you quickly jump on that instead of your phone to make it easier to access all the content that we'll be using. So some of the answers are quite similar, which is quite nice to see. We have beliefs, they motivate our decisions, our actions, what is important to us. So that's quite nice. Thank you for all those answers and sharing your thoughts. And you still have some time to finish them up. Of course, there are no right or wrong answers to this. We're just kind of orienting ourselves as of now. Great. So thank you for all the answers that you shared. We're going to go ahead and go to our next activity. We're going to take this discussion a little bit closer to home and discuss our personal values. So Tuğba summoned everyone to activity 2 on personal values that you can also see on my shared screen. Now, we ask that you also use the sticky note feature, or you can also draw your top 3 values that seem most important to you. And in the top right corner, you can see a picture of some common values just to get you started and get some ideas. And once again, there are no right or wrong answers. You have about 2 more minutes. I see some really nice answers emerging. Thank you for sharing those. If you see some that are common, and that's quite nice to see. But something that we can take away from this activity is that, for example, there's the one purple. I don't know who wrote that, and it doesn't matter, but thank you for that. But just the top one is honesty, and a little bit further down we have one where the top one is freedom. And something we can take away from this is often a value conflict emerges when individuals have different value priorities. I'm sure both of these people value honesty, but perhaps one values it more than the other. And I'm sure both of them value freedom, but one may value it more than the other. And these different value priorities are often what lead to value conflicts. You have been working mostly quietly so far. If any of you want to share anything, we have time for one comment if anyone wants to make a comment concerning their values or anything they see on the mural so far.
Yeah, you just made me think, because I wrote honesty, but honesty is a value that is very important to me. But yeah, you said perhaps when you are talking and in your relational world, this honesty can mean different things and can be interpreted in different ways. So yeah, it is very important to consider.
Right, that's an important point. When we just have, a word can mean different things to people. So thank you for that comment. And now we're gonna move on to our third activity. Thanks for your patience there. So for our third activity, this is when we will, you will start those really fruitful discussions as opposed to how you have been working on your own so far. So for this activity, you're going to be divided into groups, and we're going to discuss more about value conflicts now. So we've dealt with values. Now we're going to dive into value conflicts. So we're going to divide you into 4 breakout rooms.
Yes.
The breakout room 1 will correspond to the first group. Breakout room 2 will be the second group. Breakout room 3 will be the third group, and so on, just to be clear. And each group will have different questions that they need to answer. And each group will have some roles. They are the same for each breakout room. Just to keep track of time, coordinated discussion, make sure everyone in the group has a place and time to share. And we have the reporter role just to let you know that after the breakout room sessions, we will have some discussion and presentation in the main session. So we're going to go ahead and get started with dividing you guys into breakout rooms. And then we can start the discussions in the breakout rooms. If you have any questions, you can always ask now, or once you're in the breakout rooms and a question comes up, you can always use the ask for help feature, and either myself or Tuğba will come and help you.
Hello, I haven't been affected to a group.
Yes, we're going to add you, and
Great.
we're also, do you see the link to this mural in the chat?
No, I'm sorry, I couldn't join earlier, so I don't have the link.
No problem, we'll send that to you right away. So now you should see it in the chat.
Yeah.
I suggest that you use a tablet or a computer instead of a phone to
Okay.
make sure you get good access to this mural.
Fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we're on activity 3.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, welcome.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had really fruitful discussions in the breakout rooms. Now we're going to go ahead and move to the second phase of this activity. And Tuğba will unhide the instructions for that. So you should see that on my shared screen on the top right side. We are going to have presentations from each group, starting with the first group. Each group will have about 2 minutes to present everything that they feel like they want to share with the rest of the participants. And so go ahead and get started with the first group, and the rest of the groups, try to connect your answers to the experiences shared by the first group. Okay? So first group, it's your turn.
Share what I wrote. I was the one who put in different value systems between how I as a teacher and how my administration sees the role and the style of student discipline. They do things very differently than how I would do things. I see different value systems between my students, depending on their cultural background. That's exhibited a lot in public displays of behavior and how they treat authority figures, how forthcoming they are in the way they speak or don't speak in public, as well as different value systems between myself as a teacher and my students regarding our work ethic. I'm sure we can all relate to that, and just their personal investment in education in general. So that's what I wrote.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you covered a lot of different areas that we can, or most of us can relate to. Is there anything else that someone from your group would like to share in about a minute?
Yeah, the one that I had was the biggest value conflict I think I had with my school was that I had a unit about celebrations with my students, and then it was during the month of Black Consciousness Day in Brazil. So I decided that I wanted to address this issue, talk about slavery, talk about the Black movement and etc. Obviously, with a level of a 6-year-old, but then the school prohibited it and said that the kids can't understand slavery as something that happened as a fact. They would think that it was fiction, and they try to give a lot of excuses, and the outcome was I was prohibited to teach that lesson. So,
wow,
yeah.
that's super interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure you guys had a really good discussion there in the first group. So now we're going to move on to the second group. You talked about why value conflicts happen, and try to connect your answers to these experiences that were shared by the first group as much as you can. So you also have about So anyone from the second group, could you share some of the things that you put on the mural and your discussion?
Maybe I'll share. So in our discussion, we had discussed about having misunderstanding and different perspectives in people that could make value conflicts. And from what I hear from the first group, I see that it may happen with the different perspective and what people see in one problem. So maybe that could make value conflicts happen.
Yeah, definitely. Misunderstanding, not understanding what people mean by words, or I mean, that may even relate to the slavery experience that was shared by Nathalia. You know, just misunderstanding children's abilities to comprehend things. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else from the second group that you would like to share something? Okay, thank you for that. Then we're going to move on to the third group. Once again, try to, if at all possible, try to connect your answers to the experiences shared by the first group.
Okay, so for the third group, me and Natsuha, we discussed about conflicts and how to prevent them. And the other groups were saying that, of course, needs and values can differ and be interpreted in different ways. So one thing, good thing, should be building together a non-judgmental space that is inclusive for all the voices. And so to listen in a way that you are very attentive to others' values and needs without having these negative assumptions that relates to you and your work. So without having any negative assumptions, so that as these values may be experienced in a different way, you shouldn't categorize these values according to your own view first, and then think about the topics that you are going to discuss. You should have a very open mind about others' perspectives, and so taking the other points of view into account. And we were also saying that in some cases and circumstances, conflicts are quite inevitable because of these differences in values. So, and may not necessarily be negative. These conflicts can also be constructive if you have these discussions in these spaces where everybody is included, non-judgmental spaces. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments. And I think especially it's very important what you said, second one, that we recognize that it's not always bad to have these conflicts. So thank you for those comments, especially, and also the first one, it really made me think about how even different values, like for example, the ones that were shared in the previous activity, they could be interpreted in different ways. So thanks for that. And now on to the fourth group. Would you like to share your discussion and also this one sticky note?
Irene, do you want to go? Or
It's just that I wasn't there in the beginning, so I'm not sure, but I can try. But so at the point we were discussing when I arrived, we were discussing about the fact that one way is like, we were discussing about when you have to make a decision and there's different values in stake, and how do you make a decision in those conditions? Do you make a concession, or when do you make concession as a group with different values, and when do you decide not to make concession, and how do you take the decision? Do you take it on the basis of the majority or not? So it was more like because when you take a decision, there's often value conflicts. So how do you deal with them? And yeah, so going like not only listening and understanding others' position, but then make a decision out of all those values, for example. Maybe if you want to, the girls from the group wants to complete, please feel free.
We were thinking also because mostly value conflicts, there are conflicts between systems of belief, so they're very different to come to terms with those differences. So what we need to do is to prevent, it's better than to mitigate bad reactions, prevent how by fostering good communication, good socio-emotional skills that foster empathy and understanding of others. So this is more into how it can be prevented so as to manage the results of value conflicts healthily.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting how you kind of thinking about managing conflicts, you sort of navigated or sort of thought more about preventing them. That's really interesting. If anyone would like to share about just this activity or something that other groups wrote or shared, we could have maybe 2 comments if anyone wants to make one. If not, then we're going to move on to the next activity. Tuğba will summon you there. This will be our 4th activity, which will be a case activity. We'll dive into a particular value conflict that has to do with the topic of comprehensive sexuality education. This is something that we believe is very relevant and often hotly debated in a lot of societies and a lot of educational settings. If you're not familiar with the idea or the concept of comprehensive sexuality education, we have put together a little bit of information on the left that you can refer to, that Tuğba summoned you to right now. You can refer to that if you want to familiarize yourself more with what that is. But I'm not going to give you like a presentation now, but that's for you there as reference. Once again, we're going to divide you into groups. Each group will focus on a particular stakeholder. You will have quotes from people, from your people who, you know, are students or parents or teachers who are either for or against comprehensive sexuality education. And you have a couple of questions that you need to answer with you can write those down with sticky notes after your discussion. And you can also refer to your own experiences if you want, but make sure you stick to the particular stakeholder that is assigned to your group. So group 1 will be stakeholder 1 students, group 2 stakeholder 2, which is teachers, and so on. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the breakout rooms. Are there any questions, or does this make sense so far? And you can always ask for help once you get started. Welcome back, everyone. I hope once again that the discussions in the breakout rooms were fruitful for all the breakout rooms. So here we are. I shared my screen again if you want to look there. So we're going to have each group do a little bit of a presentation from their discussion. We'll have about 3 minutes for each breakout room. So we'll start with the first group, students.
Okay, we said that it seems to be that a shared value that both sides have is the desire to have their curriculum be meaningful and relevant for their lives. And that's kind of where the breakdown happened between the pros and the cons. Some students thought that certain content was really useful for them, and other students thought that other content was not relevant for their lives. And so perhaps to answer the third question, what would make students on both sides of the conflict feel satisfied would be to actually include students in the decision-making about what aspect of this curriculum is what is taught.
That's really neat. You were able to answer all 3 questions very concisely. So it sounds like you really understood the quotes and the questions. So that's quite nice to see. Is there anything else that you'd like to add from your discussion? Anyone else also from the group? Okay, I think then we can move on to the second group, which is stakeholder 2, teachers.
So for the teachers who are for sex education, their values, we thought like essential knowledge and inclusivity. And for the people who are against it, teachers' own comfortableness, and then what they think is more important subject, and then like religious beliefs and so on. But we couldn't really figure out what would be the shared like needs or concerns. But the third one, what would be the way to solve this would be to think about what is the best for the students. Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, I agree, sometimes it's really difficult to see any shared needs or concerns between the opposing sides. So it's totally fine that you were not able to identify that. Yeah, perhaps sometimes your own experiences can help when the quotes are not helpful. But any other comments from your group? Okay, thank you. Then we can move on to the third group, which was parents.
Yes, I can start for the group. So the full side in this perspective of parents talked about why this education is needed and important, and the against side talked about why it could be very risky and dangerous for the children as well. So we identified the possible miscommunication or misunderstanding between each side, and also the against side feeling the fear or having the feeling of threat or even anger towards the school. So we identified the issue of trust in schools, especially between the teachers and the parents. And then we have been discussing that we would need open dialogue space for the parents to also express the concerns and worries as well, and also the clarification of curriculum content, and especially the purpose is needed to hear out what kind of concerns are there. Yeah, but this inspired a lot of questions in us, I guess.
That's really good to hear. Sometimes having more questions is a good sign. And what stands out to me is that open dialogue and like clarification seems to be coming back and recurring again and be sort of a main theme so far. Thanks for sharing those, Natsuha. And any other comments from your group? Okay, then on to the last stakeholder, principals.
Who from the group wants to present? Sorry, we didn't decide before.
It's okay.
Anyone? Or
You can start. Yeah.
okay, I don't know if I'm very comfortable with presenting, but I'm going to start and you will complete. So we were saying that, so there's two issues, that there's the issue of like the thematic you're dealing with. So on the side of the people who are for, they want to address issues of body positivity, consent, and boundary setting. And on the other side, on the opponent side, they are afraid that classes about sexuality would put an unnecessary risk for disease and unintended pregnancy. So you can see that here we understand two different things about the sexual classes. Like one would be about body positivities, and the other one is engaged about disease. And so in the end, they are both concerned about the same thing. That is, like, people know how to put their boundaries, etc., but they understand the problem in a different way. I hope it's clear. And then the second one is about like convincing teachers or parents of the relevance of talking about those issues. And one way to do it is to base the lessons on scientific proof. And that's like a common concern in both sides, I would say. Maybe if the rest of the group wants to complete.
I think an issue that came up was that having a very scientific approach to this type of topic wouldn't benefit the students as much, students that would want to express themselves and ask questions. But I think when my perspective is that it depends on the context. So for example, where I am coming from in Arab country, it is practically unimaginable that such a subject could be taught in schools. So having it encompassed in a scientific approach is the first step into achieving a curriculum that's more liberal in this area. And it's the only way, starting slowly.
Thank you for those comments. And I think it's so important, the issue that you raised, that this topic is so different from context to context. And I've personally never thought of like whether scientific could be bad in some contexts. And your comment was really thought-provoking. Any other comments? If not, thank you for everyone who commented and for your work so far. We're going to go to our last activity, activity 5, and Tuğba will summon all of you there. I'll quickly navigate there on the mural. Yeah, so for this activity, we're going to bring all the different stakeholders together. So we're going to have different breakout rooms because so far each of you focused on one particular stakeholder. So now you will be with different people so that you can discuss the views of the different stakeholders. And we encourage that now you can also, we encourage that you also use your own experiences as you discuss these issues now for this activity, as well as the insights that you gained from the previous activity and from the other presentations. On the mural, you see 4 groups, but we will only have 3 groups total. And otherwise, the procedure is pretty similar. So shortly, the breakout rooms will be started. You will be assigned manually so that you're with people who have focused on a different stakeholder so far. Welcome back, everyone. And once again, really sorry about the mural, and I hope that you were still able to have great conversations and also perhaps come up with some actionable solutions that if you want, you can, well, not if you want, we're gonna go ahead and share those. If you want, you can put them in the chat for everyone else to be able to read them as well. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started with group 1.
I think that's us. Giacomo, isn't it? Group 1.
Yes.
So we were gonna co-present. Maybe I can start and then you follow and complete. We were talking first about the need to integrate students' experiences and integrate students in the decision of what should be taught. And then raising still the issue of sometimes students don't have like idea about like what they need. Sometimes you don't know what you necessarily need. So sometimes you also have to not like make them create with professionals and giving them the possibility to choose. But sometimes they like you don't always have students who are willing to create the whole thing. Anyway, then we were talking about the fact that it's important to not think that the teacher is the only one who is going to deal with this issue, and there's other professionals who are habilitated, who are skilled for this issue. I'm thinking about in the health sector, but also in the among psychologists or anything. So one strategy would be to coordinate the action of all those professionals so that the teachers don't think they have the responsibility for the whole. And then we were talking about the fact that teacher needs to communicate and be supported. And maybe I'm gonna give Giacomo the
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. About that.
Yeah, as Irene was saying, we realized that if we start from just one perspective, only students or only teachers or only principals or only parents, they feel kind of hesitant or troubled or doubtful about everything. So, but this tension can start to be kind of released, and the dialogue, this open dialogue that we were looking for, can be started if the stakeholders gather together and they build trust together. It is probably very important on the side of principals to support teachers and the teachers to gather together. So it's a group work of teachers, because they need to share to share a kind of common understanding of the topic, a common vision. But it was also essential to include then children and parents. We want children to have a say in what they learn, to have a decision making. So perhaps they could feel very hesitant, or because of very strong societal pressure from outside, and that they make them think that they cannot talk about it, but it's the whole school which could actually communicate with them and to them that they can actually engage with these topics. And also the parents may need to listen from their children and from parents and the principals that they have this aim of integrating and embedding this topic into the curriculum, because it's very helpful for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it seems like dialogue is the key word today. Thank you for sharing that. Group 2, could you share some of your discussion with us?
Maybe I can start and invite others to join. So we discussed how it's important to start from the needs of the students and children. But then at the same time, of course, like Rupa mentioned, it's also important to include parents' thoughts and feelings, also how teachers feel about teaching specific topics like this. And we were talking about what kind of possibilities we can try out for sharing these voices. And then there was one example of anonymous sharing, especially when it comes to online setting like this. It's a little bit easier, perhaps, for involved people to share their voices or opinions as well. So it's really important to create a space for people to engage in a dialogue too. And important point that is school and a curriculum needs to be built around the students and children's values and needs, like I mentioned before. And then we also talked about how and when countries' values and then also the teachers and children and parents' values have the conflict. And I would like to invite others to comment on this. Perhaps Christina or Bruno?
Yeah, I really like what Bruno wrote in the chat about the school that was posted. It's a private school in Ljubljana. It's a good example of how to deal with stuff, because in Slovenia at the moment, public schools have a problem with facing a lot of changes in regarding mental health, regarding sexuality problems and workshops. Sometimes it's really hard. So yeah, I think private schools could be an example to which to look up, and they have more freedom to choose how to present stuff. So I really like that part.
Thanks for sharing that. And it was really interesting to me how you kind of started step by step with the different stakeholders as you build this solution. And certainly, last but certainly not least, group 3.
Yeah, we talked about the need of thorough professional training for the teachers who are going to be teaching this subject. Maybe getting specialized teachers for the schools so that teachers are not going to be feeling uncomfortable teaching it. Because yeah, if the teacher is uncomfortable, then you miss the whole point, because the students don't feel comfortable having the lesson. And then also engaging all the parts in dialogue, like the principal that said that they had a meeting with the parents who raised concern, and then there was no concern anymore. So this is nice, once everybody is on board, once everybody understands what it is about, what is going to be taught, I think the conflicts are minimized. And we also talked about the inclusion of students in the creation of curriculum. But we also got to this limitation that is, students can't know that they need something if that they don't know that this something exists. So maybe we're thinking about having alumni also engage it in the discussion, and what worked for you, what do you think that was relevant for you, and keep this. Yeah,
That is really eye-opening, and I think so true that we can't know we need something if we don't know it exists. That's, and involving alumni. Very thoughtful. I think we have to add on the end on that comment by Natalia. We have come to the end of this workshop. I want to show you quickly because we have a couple more things on the mural. If you look at my shared screen, first of all, we have some resources and references, and this mural will be made available to you. So you can view these different articles, videos, some scientific articles as well. that we have used and that we have referred to in this in the creation of this workshop. And also, I'd like to draw your attention to, on the left side, you can give feedback. Hopefully, let me test. Okay, here we go. So you can definitely give feedback there and it will be visible. So there's that. And also Tuğba will make information available or visible about the debrief session, which you should see shortly. So under the same Zoom link, in about a half an hour, we can continue the discussion with just a lot freer format, just chat, discuss, talk about takeaways, or anything that you have, burning questions that arose during this workshop, or anything related to this workshop. So we'll have that in about half an hour, and you can also share feedback with us there. So I think that's all we had. Tuğba?
So you're back at 4?
Sorry, I missed that. Could you say that again?
Are we back at 4?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you in debrief. Bye-bye.
Sorry, Alex, I kinda lost it. Are we now logging out and then coming back at 4, or?
Yes, if you wish to come back, you're welcome from 4.
Okay, and then at 5, that is the coffee time, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, but for the coffee, there will be a different Zoom link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Interesting.
Good to hear. Thank you.